All right, welcome to the City Council special meeting for January 6, 2015. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and H. David Kaplan, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome council and the members of the public that are here. We've got two items to address, and then we're going to hear from citizen comment, and then we'll go back in the back and have an executive session pursuant to the listed RCW. So the first item on our agenda is Town Center 3 council input and discussion regarding the target area or property purchase. And I'll turn it over to our Chief of Staff, Brian Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and citizens. It's my pleasure to present some opportunities regarding the Town Center concept, which includes both Town Center 1, which is identified as the Performing Arts and Conference Center, Town Center 2, which is our park area in this area here, Town Center 3, which with the recent purchase of the Target property and some opportunities as to what this development may look like or could look like in a market that we have today. And then Town Center 4, which is the current transit center, and then also the property that's just to the west of the transit center that's located here. In this area just west of the transit center. So there's a couple of diagrams in addition to this particular diagram that's here that I believe council has seen. The first is, this is the diagram again that we just referred to. The second is, this is actually just an overhead view of the site plan that showcases a direct overhead view of where the Performing Arts and Conference Center, which would be located here in this area. This is what's a planned hotel location in this area here. This is the Town Center 3 property here in this area. This is the transit center for Town Center 4 and where the park is currently located, which is the sculpture park. And then Town Center 2, which is where our Town Square Park is located, is this area here. So in terms of the ideas, and you can see here, this is where the Performing Arts and Conference Center will be located. And this parcel also includes a plan for what could be a hotel, and there is market interest for that particular hotel. There's also been some discussion of different types of uses, like a combination of a condo hotel or different services associated with that. And these types of ideas have been generated by developers who have contacted us with interest pertaining to how this development may look. In terms of Town Center 3, this would be the property line right here. This would be the PAC site here. Here's the property line. And this area here is 7.48 acres. In our preliminary ideas of what the market could support in terms of a plan, this is one idea that was put forth by a local developer in Seattle. This includes residential housing, and you could have pedestal type housing You could have different types of parking, secure parking, parking underneath, parking at grade, and different types of different residential complexes here. These are green roofs that would be a part here. This here was an idea for townhomes that would have some different type of housing in this area here. The idea would be to have market or above market rate housing opportunities. And then in this center part here would be more of a lifestyle type services that could be somewhat similar to what you'd see at University Village in Seattle, with different restaurants, service, small type restaurants with less than 1,500 square feet, and having a common area here that becomes very much lifestyle type focused. This area here again would complement the Performing Arts and Conference Center for different type of area outside for people to congregate and have complementary uses in this area here. In addition, there is some interest in terms of art type housing, or different, whether an educational component could be incorporated onto this campus. There's quite a few ideas that can be incorporated into a plan such as this. Our plans and what we'd like from council, this is the initial iteration of what's possible, but is to get feedback from council in terms of what's liked about something like this, what types of amenities might be considered additionally. And as a city, under the mayor's direction, we plan to go out for an RFQ, request for qualifications, and a request for proposals for developers for this particular site. And we would plan to do that beginning in the first quarter of 2015. This area here is currently owned by the city, and our plan would be to include a hotel component in this request for qualifications and proposal. And then during the negotiation process at the RFP, we can negotiate if that gets separated off or if it's part of the overall development, but starting with a broad approach in terms of developer interest, and then moving forward in terms of those ideas. I want to talk in terms of how this property and the potential development that can occur, how that ties into other areas of the city and the overall downtown feel. As you can see up here, this represents Steel Lake Park and the property here, and there's opportunities to connect this park here in this direction. There's also opportunities to move towards the downtown and find ways to have pedestrian and connection to the BPA Trail and to Celebration Park and through the city in that regard too. How do we make the downtown pedestrian friendly, walkability, lifestyle, in addition to securing the amenities that we have planned for the park and for other development opportunities here. So with that, I'd like to just get input from council in terms of this initial idea, and I also have, following that discussion, a proposed timeline for us to move forward with an RFQ process.
All right, council, are there any, is there any input or suggestions in regard to what you'd like to see in regard to our town center target property? Councilmember Maloney, then Councilmember Honda, and Councilmember Selsky, and then Councilmember Duclos.
Thank you. And Brian, thank you so much for all the work that you've put into this with the staff. It's really exciting. And my preference would be to see, as part of the overall picture that you're describing there, so in addition to the retail and the mixed use and maybe some businesses and everything that you've described. I definitely would like to see a college campus on that site in some respect, and that'd be also, you know, residential as well. So the whole mixed use idea, I think that would be a perfect setting for a college campus location.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Honda.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. How many housing units are represented there, do you know?
I don't have an exact number.
I think it was north of 200. I think
It's 200 to 300, I think.
yeah,
is what
somewhere in there.
Okay.
And that's I'm sorry, but
Go
that
ahead.
was the idea that what we wanted to do when we first bought when we all first bought this property, if you remember, we wanted to have some sort of drawings that represented what the markets could support at that time.
Right.
So this drawing actually represents not parking underneath, but parking at grade. So, and then since then, we've been talking about this, you know, pedestal, you know, concept, or you know, including parking in a structure, you know, but, you know, that's obviously
Okay.
up for what the market can support.
My other questions are, it would be great to get the public invited and involved in this process and get their ideas as to what they would like to see in downtown. And also the surrounding properties, the strip mall right next to the park and the strip mall right on the other side of,
Right here.
yeah, right there. Have you talked to the property owners to get their ideas, or to get them on board to fixing up their properties, that get them excited about this whole process?
There has been, you know, discussion with them, especially with the purchase of the PAC property. As a result of that purchase, there were some restrictions that were removed as a result of that purchase. But from the developers that I've had contact with, this is considered just a tremendous opportunity for that property to be developed in concert with this. So in answer to your direct question, I have not had a direct conversation with that developer or with that owner of that property, but that would be something that, you know, as we move forward, that we would talk about how to integrate this property. And as we talk about just this whole interrelationship of all these properties, this area here is also a piece and a player in what's happening as well too, with some development plans that are in place here as well. So that would be part of our initiative as a city, to have those conversations with neighboring property owners to complement the vision for the downtown.
Will the road,
I was just going to say, for those who couldn't see the cursor, I think you had your cursor on the left there, on the west side, where the Top Foods, the former Top Food site is.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
will the road need to be increased from the 2 lanes that it is now to a wider road?
I'm not aware of any width changes on the existing roads, but again, that would be part of a development plan and proposal as to how the roadways would be structured.
Okay.
Preliminary discussion is that this roadway here could be a real opportunity and important access piece to both properties. Also, some discussion about how this coming off here, there's different opinions, you know, of either having some type of potential for underground parking in this area here, or having some access up here in some form, vehicle and pedestrian. But again, just very preliminary, and important that, you know, our blocks in the downtown are very large, and looking at our comp plan and what some of the development plans may be, it's important to have more access and grid access into these properties. I did, on this particular drawing, I didn't mention, but there is a plan here for a pedestrian bridge, you know, across from the transit center to this property, which you know, can add to that access piece, both for the performing arts and for this property area here.
One more question that just came to me. If we were lucky enough to get more parking from Sound Transit, how would that fit into this overall plan? You know, if they were to buy area around there to give us more parking. Has that,
You know, I'm not familiar with any, with specific plans about buying additional property in this area, other than, you know, the very significant issue of the alignment for the transit line. And I believe that will be a big piece of the overall parking plan for how transit comes through. Certainly, there's been discussion about this 320th Park and Ride and how we can better utilize and maximize that in terms of the connectivity between the existing transit center and the Park and Ride. But I'm not aware of any direct additional parking in this area.
thank you.
All right. Councilmember Selsky.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Brian. It definitely is exciting to see this, the planning of this starting, and the opportunities that we have in front of us here. Question about Town Center 3. So you mentioned that we're looking at making some of those building residential condominiums or whatever. Is there an idea to have the first floor be retail space, you know, that kind of thing, just for the ground floor?
Yes, service level type industries, you know, small restaurants, small retail, some
Coffee shops?
coffee shop, bar, you know, small beer distributor, something like that. Just lifestyle on these spaces, and it may be a mix. And again, this was just preliminary ideas of what can work, and somewhat modeled after the success that's been enjoyed at the University Village.
Okay, excellent. That's great. So you mentioned about also discussing with local, I guess, surrounding property owners, trying to get them into the vision of what we're trying to do here. Does that include to the south where the Kratzenberg, the Paldo property and all that? I mean,
Yes, very much so. In fact, the property owner here, the mayor and I have had discussions with them, and they're very much interested in working with us in terms of how that property becomes developed. So with the investment by the city and the PAC and what's happening here, there's tremendous amount of interest in Federal Way, but also in the neighboring properties in terms of what is happening and the direction that we're going.
and then how do you see that planning coming together as far as involving the local property owners? I mean,
Well, I think part of it is, you know, certainly we have the comp plan and you know, the planning tools that we have. But we certainly, as we are approached by property owners and developers, we're talking about the vision, you know, of what the ideas and the investments that are being made downtown. And with that, of how to complement and how to have this accessibility, you know, long term. So it certainly is an ongoing, you know, iterative process, and we've had more discussion in the last 6 months than I can remember. So it's an exciting time.
okay, great. And then one last question. We may have already covered this, and I may have missed it, but in the schematics for the PAC, the parking for the PAC was surface parking around the PAC. Is that still the plan, or?
There is parking for the PAC, and given our current things, I think we're about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 140, 150 spaces that are necessary to that'll be in addition that'll be needed. So that is something we're exploring in terms of use with adjacent properties. We may have some opportunity temporarily with the Town Square Park as it currently is structured. But that is something that, from a parking perspective, you know, not only use of the transit center, but you know, how do we secure that? The parking issue is really focused on about 10 days per year, where during the day there's a large event at the Performing Arts and Conference Center that would require, you know, where the transit center is full, and yet there's a full event during the day at the PAC, which that's the threshold period that's prompting some additional parking. But our community development staff certainly are aware of that issue, and we're working through that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian.
Councilmember Duclos.
Thanks. Brian, it's a very, very nice presentation. I want to thank you and the staff that worked on it. And I think this is something that developers could look at and come in probably with some ideas of their own, but it gives them, I think, a feel for what we want to see in the downtown. And it's really good. And I'm sure that we will develop specific requirements for any developer that comes in. But I really enjoy looking at this, and I'm excited about it. Also, I just wanted to say, are we offering any kind of incentives for some of those other businesses located in the area to do something to upgrade their properties? Or is there any way we can help them to do that?
You know, it's an interesting discussion. We haven't really talked about that, but Brian?
Well, you know, the city has done such a great job of creating incentives for development in the downtown over time, and a lot of those have not been capitalized on, such as our you know, sales tax, infrastructure funding that's available.
Well, you know, you don't have to go through it all, but maybe we ought to make that public again, because probably
Right.
people have forgotten it, or they're not even here any longer. And I can't name all the things that we've done, so maybe if we put that together and get it out there again.
I
Tim
think
is
that's-
smiling over there like crazy.
Tim's actually has, in some of his material, has done exactly that, laid out what are the advantages of development here in the city of Federal Way. And there are some significant opportunities and economies that can be achieved by developing here in the city.
And I apologize, Tim, I haven't had a chance to get through the whole thing, but I will by tomorrow afternoon.
Councilmember Moore, did you have a question?
No, not this time.
Deputy Mayor Burbidge, and then Councilmember Assefa Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very excited about this presentation, to see this amount of planning being put together and ready to move forward, incorporating so many of the elements that we've been working on as a city for a long time, but also there have been many efforts at giving added impetus to this work in more recently. And there are so many elements that I'm admiring here and looking forward to seeing incorporated, such as the connection between Steel Lake Park through Town Center 1, 2, and 3, and then connecting eventually with Celebration Park. The shortening of the blocks that you mentioned, where that's an opportunity at least. We can't shorten all of the blocks because we have some major facilities here that take up more than one block. But where we can, that makes it so much more pedestrian friendly, and also invites more, I believe, more development and more of that mixed use development that we're planning on achieving. I think the pedestrian bridge is a wonderful opportunity too to provide access and just make everything more available in terms of use. And the housing element, I think, is particularly important. We have quite a few families, or couples, I would say in many cases, retired folks who have raised their families in Federal Way and do not need a large house anymore. And they would very much like a place to move into in the downtown area where they wouldn't have to do as much driving, and yet they'd be close to all this exciting activity that is planned, and they would find accessible the Link Light Rail in future years too. They'd be able to walk over to, but certainly we already have the other transit availability. So there are so many elements that make me very optimistic about the enthusiasm that I'm sure will develop as these presentations are shared more widely. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Assefa Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Seeing this and visualizing it makes it even more exciting, so appreciate it. I do second what Councilmember Maloney said here about some kind of a educational school or university, but also as we're talking to hotels or whoever ends up being there, I think it would be great if they have some kind of a conference also room or breakout rooms, and multiple, because as we have conferences and hopefully there will be a few of those, then they can utilize that space. And so that would be something I would like to see happen with the hotel.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
More so comments, Brian, and to, of course, Tim. Thank you for putting this together. Clearly, I'm going to echo the words of all my colleagues on the council in that this is exciting. This is extremely motivating for families and young professionals. And that's, and some of the things I'd like you to keep in mind as I'm putting my thoughts together, and I think you've already kind of echoed these, but it's important to me, and that's a lot's happening in this town centers, and I just want to be mindful of the traffic congestions and making sure that traffic is able to flow through quite a bit. And I know that that's something you're keeping that in mind. And I do want to echo the words of clearly it's in my head that we ought to have a college enter downtown. And that is something that I would like to see envisioned here. I know that we've talked about that on and off. I am encouraged with the fact that there's plans to discuss with businesses around, because we obviously have to have a buy-in to all of the businesses that are going to be impacted by the downtown corridor. So a lot of exciting things are happening here. I'm encouraged to see housing. I mean, it's definitely something that was part of my vision as well, and seeing people move to downtown and start moving around in our downtown by walking. And that's, I'm encouraged by that. But I do want to say that what's going through my head is that with all these housing going on, there's a lot of apartments that are being built in Federal Way. And I just want us to be sensitive in the PR aspect. Because I know there's reasoning for us to move people and encourage people to come to our downtown and live in our downtown. But going around our Federal Way and listening to the concerns, reading things on Facebook and the comments on the Federal Way Mirror, I know that's a concern of people. So I just want to keep that in mind. Thanks to the work that's been done, I'm excited about the future.
Great. Councilmember Duclos and then Councilmember Maloney.
I just want to say one thing in terms of the housing.
Yeah.
Most of the housing that's gone on in this city for quite a while has been lower income or affordable housing. This housing would be market rate and higher, and
Right.
I think that would start to bring up that area.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really not worried about the housing issue because I know it's going to be market rate.
Yeah, we were actually, with the individuals that were drawing, making up these drawings, we were talking about being at market or above, and then it's that sort of hitting that sweet spot of you don't want to price yourself out, but you also want to make sure that the market, so we want to make sure this is market driven. Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you, and actually that was going to be my comment too. The housing is going to be something that would elevate rather than anything else, and it could be, it may not be apartments, it could be condos, something along those lines, which is what I would like to see, some more ownership in the downtown core by residents.
And I agree with that too. And I'd like to see a bidding war.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, Council. Any other comments? Because we've got,
So just in conclusion, I have a tentative timeline for an RFP/RFQ process. And again, we starting in December of 2014 with work on that material, and those efforts are currently underway. And you can see our proposed timeline here, and I'll have a copy for you of that. And ultimately, we're looking at having approval of a particular plan. And again, this schedule is tentative, but looking at August of this year.
August to, could you make that?
Before where Mayor presents an option for a developer for approval by council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, great job, Chief. I appreciate all your work. Thank you, Council. All right, now let's move on to the some assembly required. Our new Economic Development Director, Tim Johnson, is present, and he's going to give a presentation in this meeting and also during the regular City Council meeting. That will be a truncated version of this. So Tim, we've been waiting a long time to have an economic development policy. We're very glad you're here, all the way from Sacramento, California, and we're about to see all the work that you've put in over the past 100 days. So with that, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple things before I get started. The mayor always likes to say I'm from Sacramento, but it was so long ago when I was from Sacramento, he forgets how far and up and down the state I've been. And I'm going to get to reintroducing myself to all of you, but it was back in September when I was hired, middle of September when I started this task. So it's only been 100 days, but I guess I'm considered part of the woodwork around here now, because there certainly isn't any way I'm being treated any other way than woodwork at this particular point. So, but it is a pleasure, an absolute pleasure and honor to be before you this evening, as we promised that at the 100-day mark you would have an economic development strategy in which to move forward on. I want to stop for a moment and just share something with all of you. It has been an absolute pleasure to meet you and work for you. I've been doing economic development for 35 years, and I can honestly tell you, without any equivocation at all, that you are the finest group of people I've ever met. And I will tell you, as a council, and I have worked for a lot of different cities and counties in my career, you folks could sell sunshine to the people of Florida. You are absolutely amazing. I witnessed a couple weeks ago where, and I'll talk about it this evening, where in 1 week alone you hosted and participated in hosting a delegation from China. You met with the president, chairman of the board, and CEO of a Fortune 500 firm, Progressive Insurance. And for the mayor, he met with one of the owners of the Sacramento Kings, who actually had read about the town center project online, called and asked, because he had just finished a project of smaller nature but of interest, and wanted to come up here and meet with the mayor to talk about potential and option of working with a master developer to bring something forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think it's just overwhelming when you think about the fact that you are now in a position to be able to move an agenda for business and for jobs. And I think it's tantamount to the success that we have such great people like you on City Council to be able to go meet with people who are CEOs and chairs of Fortune 500 firms. So thank you very much for the time and effort that you put into this tenuous job. It is not an easy task by any means, and I'm sure the salaries that you all get paid reflect that. So having said with that, let's have some fun this evening if we can. It's called Some Assembly Required. It's talking about shaping a high-performing economy for Federal Way. How did I get this, and how did it come about? After some 35 years of working in economic development, from starting where I began my career in Portland, Oregon, where I learned more about what not to do in economic development than rather what to do, and that is something that all of you recognize, and that is working with the stakeholders of your community. In 1958, the oldest community development corporation on the West Coast, which is the biggest tax increment financing district in the nation of Portland, Oregon, and the Portland Development Commission. Those folks have done a tremendous job, but they recognized earlier on in their process that they made a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes were they didn't reach out to their stakeholders and didn't develop relationships with their community partners. And it's tantamount to the success of the program. And moving forward from there, you know, I was in the National Trust for Historic Preservation Main Street program, was the first Main Street manager that dealt with downtown development west of the Rockies. From that particular position, I moved on to Sacramento, where the mayor and city council hired me to put together the first Office of Economic Development, its first Economic Development Commission, and its first Economic Development Strategy. Dealt with the closure of 3 military installations and the loss of some 80,000 jobs. If you think that Weyerhaeuser it concerns me, yes, it's very important, but everything that I've worked with pales in comparison. Then moved on to San Diego to go into the city manager's office there, and dealt not only with 2 Super Bowls, but a national political convention, a World Series, America's Cup, World Cup series, and a host of other activities in public investments, in particular reuse of military installations and defense related facilities. And then back into private consulting services, where some of the very projects that Brian was alluding to in the town center, I've helped finance and develop. So what I'd like to do this evening is be somewhat methodical and just try to provide you with some background about what economic development is, because I think you need a foundation for, as we move forward, that you understand this. So our purposes tonight is simply to formulate an action that creates a high-performing economy, simply to create jobs while continuing to both diversify and sustain federal way. And some assembly required falls into the concept of all of the components that are necessary relative to the planning, designing, financing, and construction associated with the programs, projects, and services that go into either redevelopment or economic development. Now, you'll hear me tonight talk about a variety of different terms, and I don't mean to talk over anybody. You'll hear me talk about fuzzy math. You'll hear me talk about shift share, location quotient factoring, but I will not use a term as my esteemed colleague from the Budget and Finance, Professor Arwula, did the other night at council, where he used the technical term boo-boo. You will not be hearing me talk about that this evening, because I don't think we have any boo-boos at this particular point in time. But there are 3 fundamentals that I'm going to walk you through, and that is 1, the first, the prerequisites, step 2, the foundations, and 3, into the strategy. Economic development. Let's talk about it. Its definition is there's many definitions for economic development as there are cities and counties in the nation. But this is probably the best definition that's out there in the context of the profession. But you can make it whatever you want. But here's what is simple. Wealth, income, jobs, and investments. That's what it's all about. Creating prosperity for the people federal way, increasing primary wage earning incomes, creating jobs that get primary incomes, and corresponding investments. Now, the next element is economic growth versus economic development. Sometimes we get confused in that. Economic growth is what we typically benchmark to. So it would be increase in population, infusion of capital, harvesting of natural resources, of which this city has been a part of a company that's been doing that for decades, and correspondingly in the Puget Sound, changes in technology, which has also been going on for decades. So again, you can see the comparison between economic growth and economic development. Now, here's one point that I would just like to refer to. There's 2 different types of economic development. There's a supply-side economic development and a demand-side economic development. Federal Way has been practicing a supply-side economic development, and I compliment all of you. I mean, I guess that's one of the things that really captured my interest in wanting to come to work for you. What that simply means is on a supply side, I'll make it very simple. I can tell when I'm outside of Federal Way. You know how I can tell I'm outside of Federal Way? The roads. You have made a dedication to making sure that those roads are in wonderful shape. I can tell when I'm in Tacoma. I can tell when I'm in Des Moines. I can tell when I'm back in Federal Way. It's the streets, and I compliment you and all the staff that's involved with it. I can also share with you that, you know, you work diligently on making sure that you have a low crime rate in this town, and all the staff that goes along in making that happen. That's great leadership. So whether you offer any kind of incentive to business and industry, your roads don't go away. The crime rate is going to, you're trying to always keep the crime rate low. Conversely, on the demand side, that's where you get into a little bit of trouble. And that's when we talk about the incentives, and where you see so many cities and counties in southern part of the United States where they offer incredible incentives to business and industry. But we witnessed what happened to there in the last Great Recession, where many of those businesses that they offered huge incentives to are no longer in business, and subsequently their unemployment rates have gone up. So I compliment you on that. So what do economic developers do? Brian talked earlier about ground level retail and the Town Center 3 and you know, a couple beer and wine, and I like a glass of wine too, but these are the kind of things that I work on as well. So if you have an issue about what I work on and what the profession works on, this is primarily the focus of attention, and it's to respond to you and the issues that you're dealing with, and trying to provide you with economics to help answer the questions associated with what you're working on. Evolution of strategies is important for you to understand, because at this particular point we were in what would be economic development 6.0. In the 1940s we started with smokestack chasing and an industrial component. In the 1950s, economic development moved not only into industrial smokestack chasing, but also retention of businesses, followed by small business and entrepreneurship development, following in the 1980s and 90s for sustainable economic development. Later on in the 2000s, we were working on comparative advantages, and that's where the complexities of economic development started to change. We'll show you later on in terms of targeted industries. And then currently, what we're witnessing is something called placemaking, and again, we'll talk about that in a moment. Before the recession, as it related to economic development, there were 4 or 5 things that happened. Before 2008, there was plentiful federal funding for economic development programs for local municipalities. There were plentiful tax credits. Local revolving loan funds were absolutely robust. I oversaw one that grew in less than 5 years to over $48 million in a community that had been named not once but twice the worst place to live in America. That was Yuba City, California, by Rand McNally in Money Magazine, and because of that, they did very well in terms of before the recession. There was a heavy use of special districts to help pay for infrastructure projects across the nation, and tax-exempt bonds were used extensively. After the recession, however, this is what happened. There was a reduction, and if not complete elimination, in federal funding for economic development. Tax credit projects existed but became much more layered and complex. The tax-exempt bonds were available, but only for those communities with good credit. Local revolving loan funds were stressed, if not eliminated, and collapsed. Government grants, as we all know and what we're working on today, have become reduced or eliminated, so it's always great to see them when we get them. Special districts have faded away. Tax-exempt bonds are still used extensively, again, but it depends upon what your credit rating is. And there was a lot of elimination of state programs, and you witnessed one here, and that was the elimination of the state Office of Tourism. So now we go into the next component that I wanted to talk to you about, and this is about foundations. Forecast looks good for us headed forward. The Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco continues to tell us that we look to see a positive focus in Washington, and the growth looks good. So I think that there's a lot of room for optimism here. In the report, as we continue to do our research, we found 4 emerging positive themes. One, you have a very young population here. There's a good quality, excellent quality of life here. I've fallen in love with the place. You have a diverse and skilled labor force, and you got a great location, as you all know, between I-5 and 99, between Tacoma and Seattle, close to the airport, between 2 ports. It's really good geographical location. Of other issues related to that are related to our educational levels, our income levels, our job housing balance, and the subsequent departure of Weyerhaeuser. Let's talk about these just for a moment. Under educational levels, Councilwoman Maloney, I concur with you, and I've listened to all of you, but this was something that echoed with me, and I wanted to make sure that this got into our presentation, into our strategy. Federal Way's bachelor's degrees, we only have 25.4% of our population that has said degree or higher. In comparison to our surrounding area, if we're going to participate in a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and what is coming shortly to us, the information world, age, we need to make sure that we have more folks in our population that have bachelor's degrees and beyond. Because without education, we go nowhere. And I think it's tantamount to the success that we work real closely with our community college, our universities in the area, and our residents to see how we can do that. And there is a component under the strategy to do that.
Excuse me, Tim. Tim, where did you get those figures from?
Census Bureau.
Okay.
As we talk about the Census Bureau, let's move on to this chart. They do a program called On the Map, and it identifies for us the movement of the labor force in and out of Federal Way. Now, when I came here, I came from obviously California, where it's a parking lot out on Interstate 5 in most of the metropolitan areas. And so I came here and I was surprised at the gridlock that you get on Monday through Friday rush hours. Well, I now start to understand why, because out of the some 364 Federal Way residents who work in our population, there are 32,000 of them get up and leave Federal Way to go work someplace else. Conversely, there's another 25,000 who come into Federal Way to work here. So this is what the Census Bureau is telling us. Now, all I need to do is watch television in the morning and look at the TV cameras that they're showing and where the gridlock is, and I can understand this. So this has not been something lost on you all. It's been in the comprehensive plan. It's something that I think we need to do, I need to do in the strategy a better job of ensuring that we're continuing to grow jobs here, so that folks in Federal Way can stay and work here. Our income levels. There's a report that many of us have been involved with relative to the Brookings Institute that published a report this last year on South Sound area, and what they found is that the income levels and poverty levels of the area are quite high in comparison to other areas, particularly in King County. But I wanted to show this comparison for you. Later in the report, I'll show you what we'll try to do to bring those poverty levels down. But I think it's something that we have to address, and it's a key concern moving forward. Into the strategy now. One of the things that I've admired about this community, and I'm going to switch gears on you here for a moment, is that you've had a great history of economic development, and you should all be complimented and praised for your work in having economic development. In your mission and goals that were adopted almost a decade ago, you had Federal Way in promoting economic development, not only in its mission, but also in your goals. However, if I go back here to economic development, the mission, the vision of the city has been one that was a matter of fact. It wasn't really reached out and grabbed you in the context of a vision. So in working with my colleagues back in October at the management retreat, they came up with this vision, and I really like it, and that's to become the premier community in the Puget Sound. And it's predicated not only from a business perspective, but also from a quality of life perspective. And we can quantify the progress on those, which I'm going to be calling for later in this presentation to see how we benchmark ourselves there. But let me share something with you. When I was in Yuba City and working in there, again, let me respond again. It had been named not once, but twice the worst city to live in America. Now, you had no place to go but up. And the last time I checked, Federal Way had never made on any list before of being bad at anything. So the point being is, if we want to go to the next step, I think we have to reach out and really have a vision that gets us to where we want to go. And I think that we can align this with the goals and objectives that we're working on. But I honestly believe that when people think of the Puget Sound, they need to be thinking about Federal Way and what you've done to continue to diversify and sustain and grow your economy. So hence the reason why that particular line came to the forefront. And our mission is simple. It's to produce solutions to attract, retain, and expand businesses, jobs, and investments, along with improving their tax base and our quality of life. And why do I add quality of life? Because when you talk to a site location consultant, they're going to look at everything from here, to the quality of the streets, to the low crime rate, to the parks and recreation, to the tax rates. Those are part of your quality of life that somebody will look like, and that's what we are going to have to gauge ourselves in. So hence you go back to the vision statement of looking at trying to become the premier community in the Puget Sound. I don't want to dismiss this. I don't want to discount it. I really want us to embrace it. Our goals are simple, and there's 6 of them. Promote and create a sustainable, diversified, and globally focused economy. Help attract, retain, and expand businesses, jobs, and investments. Alignment of reuse of Weyerhaeuser and its corporate campus to the next generation of jobs. Build a brand to promote and enhance the Federal Way. Ensure educational opportunities align with the future job growth. Formulate tools and systems to encourage entrepreneurship. There are over 30 objectives in the report that identify align with those goals. They are yet to be prioritized because I want to make sure that the community has a chance to look at those. Sure, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and then there's some others that are not. It'll take a little bit of time, but we have good partners we'll work with. We'll work with our Chamber of Commerce. We'll work with our community college. We'll work with our partners in order to be able to achieve these. And whether it's us or we are a partner to them, we'll work together to make sure that we achieve these goals. So here's how I've done it. I've listened to you real closely. Real closely. Here are the 4 special projects that we'll be working on. We'll be working on the reuse of Weyerhaeuser, downtown development, particularly obviously the town center, the university initiative, and then of course branding, which you just all had approved that effort moving forward. Then beyond that, we'll work in economic development programs and services, which involve recruitment, retention, expansion. I'll be working on market intelligence. That means the gathering information of what's going on here in our economy and the surrounding environs. Access to and availability capital. That is the lifeblood of business. And if we're not being able to supply that, and I don't mean the city directly, but if we're not working to help make sure that there is what is called the intermediation of capital to Federal Way. That means the movement of capital is versus the disintermediation, which is the movement out of Federal Way of capital. We're making a wrong turn. So we're going to be working real closely on that. I'll explain further. And then communication and outreach. Let's talk about the 4 projects. Weyerhaeuser. We've worked with Weyerhaeuser and their consultant, Brian Wilson, the chief of staff, and I meet with them on a weekly basis and then face-to-face on a monthly basis. So we're constantly working with them. We have formulated a multidisciplinary response team that's comprised of our governmental agencies that serve public systems infrastructure to and through the campus. We completed a major report. I'll make sure that you all get it this evening. It's called the Conditions and Considerations Analysis, which looks at the Weyerhaeuser campus, which they've used. Weyerhaeuser is very proud of the fact that we did that for them because we actually found out a lot of information that they didn't have in the subsequent reuse of their property. And we will be working to find an end user. We're going to work hand in glove with them to find end users, and they have, and you will hear from them on the 20th as they come before you on a special session, I believe, to discuss where they're at today. But our expression to you is that our intent of this strategy is to find an end user that will produce as many jobs that Weyerhaeuser had as it did at its prime. Downtown Center. Currently working obviously on the PAC and Town Center 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. And listening to Councilwoman Duclos, who's talking about issues associated with that, I have something called the Idea Zone that talks about incentives, and we'll show you that in just a moment or two. Here it is. It's called the Idea Zone. It stands for Innovation, Design, Education, Entrepreneurship, and Arts Zone. And what's really wonderful about you folks historically is, and a great thing about the state of Washington is that as a professional coming from outside the area, you had all these great programs. You have wonderful programs in the state. The dilemma is at the local level, the professionals have not been showing you how to couple these or bundle these. And so we have programs that we have already in existence but have not utilized. So what I'm recommending to you tonight and to the community is a series of incentives that the state has offered, and we have been given these, but we have never bundled these. And so we want to use these in the downtown area. Now, I'll probably be criticized for this, but I got thick skin, so let me work through this. We have the LIFT program, which is a grant program that you received, and we're not using it to its maximum. We can get, in the downtown area, you only have to pay 1/2 of the school impact fees, which on $1 million, think about what that saves you. The next one is reduction on traffic impact fees. That's about 47 or 48%, I think, on the cost, so on the dollar, so that's substantial. The other one that you just approved, thank you very much, was the Central City Project Area SEPA, or Environmental Impact Report, so that a company does not have to do a full EIR or EIS. There are no parking fees. We do not have a local business and occupation tax. We have no corresponding headcount fee that goes along with that. And now the one where I'll probably get criticized, but I want to take the moment just to explain it to you. I'm calling for the elimination in the Central City, going forward for the next 5 years, of no business license fee for any business that goes into the Central City area that's focused on development of innovation, design, education, entrepreneurships, or the arts. I estimated this, and I sat and talked with our budget and finance director, and I just want to share this with you. And I'll ask this to the audience. Do you know that our total cost, our annual cost for a business license is only, for the first year, is only $35? For the second year, it's only $25? I'm not talking a whole lot of money here. I did the estimation, if we figured it out on 20 businesses each year, compounded over 5 years, and even on the 5th year, we go all the way out to 10 years, it would be a total of $25,000 plus dollars. I'll tell you what, I'll split the difference with you and you can take it out of my salary. But I'll tell you this much. It will work, because you're sending a signal, you're sending a shot right across the bow of business and industry that you care about them. And that's what it's in the downtown.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this okay? Yeah. Okay. We actually talked in great detail about some of this last night at the land use meeting, and we talked about whether we market the items that we already embrace as differentiators. We need to find out how much we differentiate from the surrounding communities, the ones who are competitors. Do you have that information?
I do. And
Fantastic.
what's so humorous about this, council member, is that they're not bundled this way. They like to put them all out in enumeration, but they never show you how to bundle anything. So I figured if you're going to put all this investment in your downtown area, we better be branding ourselves and utilizing the tools that we have in order to share with business and industry that we're serious about this.
Thank you, and I agree 100%.
Councilmember Duclos.
I just want to share this with you, Tim, because the council and our city has been very willing and able to work with businesses. But when the recession started, we had a meeting with the realtors and several other businesses, and I think we made like 23 or 24 changes to our code and our fees and everything to help them stay in business and work here in the city. After that, they took what we did to every other city in King County that they worked in and showed them what we had done. But we are the leaders in that, so we are always willing to look and work with our businesses to help them be successful in our city.
That's great. Thank you, council member, for sharing that. So that doesn't mean that I'm going to be taken out to the woodshed afterwards for submitting this concept of the reduction of the.
Well, I didn't say that.
Okay. Moving on, and then the last one is the use of what is the redevelopment infrastructure financing process, which we are one of only 19 cities in the state, and we haven't taken advantage of using that, but we really need to in the context of moving forward. Oops. Okay. Next one is dealing obviously with the performing arts. I'm suggesting that it is not the new venue, but the venue in the Puget Sound. And when you start looking at all of this, I think what's really important for you folks to understand is that as we move forward on this, I see something completely different than maybe what you see. And as it relates to the town center, we'll talk about this as one of the targeted industries coming forward, but the concept of, nobody talked about this, and I would hope that the council members would think this through, no concept of an art gallery going into this area where you're going to spend close to $35 million, $36 million. And there are people who are in this community, who own property in this community, who could donate and dedicate their art to an art museum. And I think it's really important that we look at this. And I'll talk a little bit later on this evening on new market tax credits and the art and tourism targeted cluster.
May I ask a question? Yeah. The art gallery, idea has been brought up before, but what kind of art gallery are you talking about? A standalone building or what?
Depends on, that's a really good question. It depends, I think, on the nature of the individual or individuals that might bring that forward to you for your review. In some cases, it may be, there are some people out there who could bring a world-renowned art gallery to this community, in which case they would say, would you mind if we participate in with a master developer of the town center and build a world-class architectural facility as well as putting world-class art inside of it? And does that change the nature of what you might be thinking? So it's just an opportunity. That's all that it is an opportunity. But I want you to know about that.
Thank you.
University initiative, again, recruitment. I'll be out working with you all on the recruitment of a branch campus in the downtown area. Branding, again, I'll be working with you folks. I've been given that assignment, so we'll be working with you as we go forward on this relative to the retreat and so on and so forth to get this package and move forward for you. Business recruitment. Okay. This is where the rubber meets the road in this report. When I started doing the research in this, what I found was fascinating. I hope that everybody can see this. I know it's difficult, but maybe you can see it on these individualized screens. I went to and talked with my peers around the area in terms of looking at cluster analysis. And you can see the different industries and corresponding sectors that they looked at. And there were some commonalities between Federal Way and ourselves, but the ones that we looked at were professional business services, construction, information communications technology, life sciences, healthcare, entrepreneurialism, one that I know that's out there, but it's of interest to us based upon the investment that's going on, arts and tourism, and then international trade and investment. We did this predicated upon what's called the location quotient factoring, and on the left-hand side of this chart is the annual compounded growth rates that occur, and then on the lower portion is what's called the location quotient. And the location quotient is an analysis that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Department of Labor, looks at in terms of the individual growth that's going on within an industry sector. And so when you look at this, that's how we, if everything is moving to the far right, up the chart, the good thing that's about this chart is everything is in positive territory. If it was to the left of the X and Y axis, we would be in a negative mode. But in this one, where all of our industries are in a positive mode. What's fascinating about this as we go through this is that while manufacturing is one of our largest sectors, most of those people work outside of Federal Way. But those who work inside of Federal Way are in professional business services, healthcare, education, arts and tourism, which is my term for leisure hospitality, information community technology, and of course, retail. But retail is a function of people making primary wage earning incomes that spend. So when I'm looking at income levels, I'm looking at what are the industry sectors that are going to create primary wage earning income jobs that will spend money in our community, that will help drive our community. Hence the reason how we got to this. In recruiting the types of businesses, I'm not going to let this one pass by. And one of the key elements associated with this is that we have never really looked at attracting filming, Hollywood films, and television to Federal Way. So here's my pitch to you. I've talked with the mayor about this, and we said, how about a reality show called Federal Way? That'll catch a lot of people's attention. I'm not sure what the theme would be, but I have a good idea that it would go well. We'll work on business expansion and retention. We'll work on market intelligence, the gathering of data and information by those categories. And then what I said before, and I think is really important, and I did some forensic review of our business licensing. And I was talking to our finance director about this, and I said, I find it fascinating. We have almost 5,000 business licenses that people pay into Federal Way. But only about 58% of those, and this is in your book, Some Assembly Required, actually physically are located in Federal Way. And out of that number, 70% of them employ only between 1 to 5 people. They're entrepreneurs. And if they can't get access to and availability to capital, then what winds up happening is they go out of business. So it's really important that we look at a variety of things. One of the things that I was talking with Becca Martin about was the importance of having at least a biannual lenders forum where we can bring both for-profit and nonprofit lenders together on a biannual basis. There's also a federal program that was created by Janet Yellen, who's now the chair of the Federal Reserve when she was president of the Federal Reserve San Francisco. It's called the Equity Equivalent Line of Credit Program. Jeff Watson and I will be looking at that. There's opportunities with CDFIs, angel networks, crowdfunding, and even an examination of the creation of a community development corporation that you'd oversee. In the context of this, we're also looking at communications and outreach, formulation of business district associations. We need one desperately in the downtown area, Twin Lakes, North Pack Highway, South Pack Highway. On an annual basis, I'd like to bring in all of the landlords, property owners of commercial, industrial, and office space for a review and work with each member of the council. We will have an economic summit. This is not a forecast. This is not a forecast. I'm going to bring in 3 to 4 of the most significant site location consultants in the United States to meet with you in the community, to give you their impressions on the community and what we need to do to continue to move forward. We'll be working on the economic development element of the website, and we'll continue. And I hope that you get this, the Federal Way Business Minute. I hope you appreciate that and you like that. Our outcomes, this is the last slide, so I think we're on time here. Our intent is to stay on a diverse and sustainable, globally focused economy, an economy focused on the future. We have performance metrics that are in the report that can show you how you can measure my success in moving forward and working for you and the team. We're budget conscious. I know that you've asked if we need any help and assistance. There's higher priorities besides what we do, and we've learned to be a team in this and work on this, and the multidisciplinary teams necessary to do that. We'll be working with our local partners. As I said, I want to work with the chamber. I want to work with our community college. I want to make sure that we achieve these things, and we don't always have to be the one that does it. We can be as good as an equal partner with everybody else and what they're working on too as well. Last but not least, I'll share this outcome with everybody because some people may not stay for this evening's presentation. Here's my expectations. And I will just tell you, I'll go back to my Yuba Sutter experience with Yuba City. I got them to agree to the following vision, that Yuba City would become one of the best rural economic development programs in the nation in 3 to 5 years. And within 5 to 7, it would become the best in the nation. Well, we hit that vision because in the 4th year, Forbes magazine named Yuba City one of the top 10 rural locations in the nation in which to do business. And in 6 years, the U.S. Department of Commerce named it as the best rural economic development program in the nation. So what I'm going to suggest to you tonight is this. I'm estimating that there will be somewhere between $350 to $450 million in new public and private investment over the next 2 years in Federal Way. This will include, obviously, projects that are going on that you've already earmarked for the town center. You've got Federal Way High School redevelopment. You're going to have the investment into Weyerhaeuser. And you've got the Children's Hospital going in here as well, and a whole host of other projects, too many to mention tonight. I also believe that you will see in the manifestation or announcement of 10,000 jobs over the next 2 years, either full-time, permanent, or temporary, here in Federal Way. And you will be able to reduce the poverty level by 4% over the next 2 years, reversing the trend of where we've been. These are the kind of outcomes that I'm calling for in Some Assembly Required. I know it's aggressive, but we've got a great team of people. I feel like I'm in an organization that is riding a crest right now towards success. So with that, I thank you for your time this evening. and I'm available to take any questions.
Tim, thank you very much for that thoughtful presentation and very detailed. You mentioned Becca Martin. We do have the CEO of the Federal Way Chamber of Commerce, Becca Martin, in attendance today. Just wanted to say thank you very much for being here. I'm not going to, exactly. And we're going to be working hand in glove with the Chamber. We have Councilmember Honda and then Councilmember Duclos. Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. In this, in your report, there's a statement that says Federal Way's economy is on the rise and the economic conditions look good. Federal Way was recently identified by the website Wallet Hub as one of the strongest economies in the nation. This is page 11. Could you send us that information where you got that from so I could read the report?
Yeah, you know, I put that out in the Business Minute, and I can send it to you again.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Also, I would, you know, first of all, I should have started with thank you for your presentation. It's been very interesting to listen to and very exciting. One of the things I hear most, besides the lack of jobs in Federal Way, is our school district. And in this report, I've only read up to page 60, and I need to go back and read the whole thing again, but we got it pretty late yesterday. I didn't see the school district in here and how we need to work with the school district. I think we've got a good school district, but you know, people bring their families here because of schools, and so we need somehow to work with our school district. I'd also like to continue to work with the Chamber of Commerce and really make them a strong partner in this, a very strong partner, because alone we are not going to accomplish this, but together we can accomplish a lot. And all of these programs sound great, but what would be the cost of some of these programs, and have we found out the cost, and how are we going to fund some of these things?
As you move forward on looking at the strategy over the next 30 days in the context of going to the different committees that I'll report to, planning tomorrow night, FedRAC later in the month, back to you on the 20th with a public hearing, moving forward to yet other committees and presentations. We'll start to glean what the priorities are that you want to accomplish, and then from that particular point I'll be able to identify those dollar amounts for you. So this is a draft, so this is the opening salvo of looking at these things. So some of these are low-hanging fruit that have absolutely no cost or are part of the daily operations of running economic development. Some of them, on the other hand, we're going to require some direction. So I appreciate you asking that question. So we'll make sure that that's covered.
Councilmember, thank you. Councilmember Duclos.
Tim, I just want to thank you. This is very exciting, and you put together some good information for us, and I look forward to working with you on this, and I hope you can keep your energy level that high, and maybe some of us can get up there that high too. But it's a wonderful plan, and I look forward to some more of your details on all of this. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And I think some of it, you know, we were setting the agenda for the retreat, or talking about some of the items, and actually you have some of the things that we brought up in here. One of them is our image, the city's image, and what we want to portray out there. So that, I think, would fit right in with what you're talking about. And I'm thinking we're going to spend some time at the retreat talking about that and trying to see if we can align it and get. I think the stars are moving in the right direction, and I think they're lining up, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Federal Way is going to look like in the next 10 years. So, thank you for the report.
Councilmember Maloney?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really, really excited about what you've presented tonight. I do think there are some things we need to hash out, but overall, I like your energy. I like your presentation. I've been looking forward to something like this for 7 or 8 years. I'm not kidding. I've been pushing for a really comprehensive plan for economic development that incorporates all of these elements from a very long time, as have the other council members and the mayor as well. But it's something that I love the vision, and I love moving forward, and it really positions Federal Way as a center for opportunity, and that's really welcome. I have one question in regard to the sectors that you identified, and those are sectors that we currently have, correct?
No.
No,
No.
okay, so those are,
These were ones that where we now have a comparative advantage
okay,
over other communities.
okay,
And I think one of them that was really exciting is the fact that arts and tourism, again, recreation, leisure, I named it arts and tourism because I thought it felt in a better image with where you're headed in terms of the work that you're doing on the PAC and the work that you're doing on tourism here in the area, that we use that terminology. But
Okay.
in the context of the federal government, the state government, it's considered leisure and hospitality.
okay. So the real question I had was, so as we are looking at a vision, we're looking at attracting different industry, not necessarily what we currently have. Is that correct?
That's in
Okay.
part correct.
Okay.
And you notice that one of them that's very small but can have a major impact on us is information communications technology. And it can be substantial. And
Okay.
we haven't really been playing in that area, but that's where the future of new
Good.
jobs is.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Selski, then Duclos.
Thank you,
and then
Mayor.
the Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you. So, Tim, thank you for the presentation. I definitely appreciate your experience that you brought here with 3.5 decades of doing this from elsewhere, and we can definitely see the enthusiasm and the experience that you bring with us, and how you're going to apply that in helping us get to where we want to get. One of the questions I have is, we're really interested in expanding the tax base. I mean, that's what this is all about. And do you foresee or project that with the growth that we can expand the tax base enough to, I guess, to cover the city's investment of this project, our part of the investment?
One of the key elements that you see in this project is the issue of sustainability. And so that goes without saying, that I have to look at that metrics and see how that's going to move forward. The reuse of Weyerhaeuser, the subsequent redevelopment of the downtown area play heavily into that in outcome. And that's why I get a little vocal with the reuse of Weyerhaeuser if it would just become 400 acres of housing. Because if it doesn't initiate job development and long-term and quality jobs that pay primary wage earning incomes, we're right back where we started from again, a non-sustainable tax base.
Right, and we're looking at potentially, with that property the way it is, an S&P 500 or some huge corporation that we're, I guess, pursuing to bring into there.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to briefly say I do anticipate a lot of hashing out as we establish the priorities here, and I expect that this will engender a great deal of added energy among the council, among the whole city staff, and I hope additionally, I expect fully in the community as a whole. So, thank you.
All right, and we did have on the agenda public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on our, as we formulate the strategy, and as Tim said, this is sort of the opening salvo and how we're moving forward. Just want to make sure that we open the floor to the citizens in case you had a comment or a question. Anthony, you want to come on up? Anthony Murrieta will approach the microphone. That'll give you all just a few minutes to think about whether you want to comment. Thanks for coming tonight, Anthony.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to say something on its behalf. What I hope the council also takes into consideration, not only with this downtown core, but with the redevelopment of Weyerhaeuser, is the mobility, whether it's freight mobility or whether it's this downtown core is terrible when it comes to traffic. And I know that we've had the opportunity to meet with your public works director, met with your traffic, and there's more ways to address this issue, and they're expensive, and it's something that's going to take long-term planning, and we can't keep using the excuse that this is too expensive and we can't implement it tomorrow. We have to start with some type of systematical change. You have 5 lanes of off-ramp on the freeway when there's 5 lanes of freeway at that particular moment. It takes so long to get off the freeway and get through this downtown core. When you're doing the redevelopment, I hope you also look at some of these streets. I hope you look at closing or reconfiguring how some of these streets or signals are done. When we talk about redevelopment of warehouser and bringing in a Fortune 500 company, that's great, but is there going to be redevelopment of that property in general? And when you do, you have to make sure not only the streets, but the infrastructure, which a contractor is going to want to put together, has to meet the sustainability of the city, because once that street is developed, it becomes your street. And then you're responsible for maintaining the electricity and the water and the wastewater. And you look at the flooding that just took place in Aberdeen, you could point to any other city that has these issues. It's because substandard process was put in place in order to cut corners, and then when a worst case scenario took place, the system couldn't handle it and it all fell apart. Now who's going to be cleaning up that mess in Aberdeen? The city of Aberdeen, because they now become your city streets. So it's been a major issue, at least of mine. I hope that the city council, when you address these issues and the redevelopment, that you also take into consideration bringing more people into an already congested area, and what is it that you're going to do to move those people around and move them around effectively. Because if all we're going to do is bring them into a bottleneck and then keep them in the bottleneck, people will come only for a short time before they say, I don't want to go because it takes me too long to get there or to get out of there. So I think the city has done a great job up to this point, but please focus on traffic and people and freight mobility. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Great comments. I really appreciate it. Anybody else that would like to make a comment? All right, we have just a few minutes before 7. We have scheduled an executive session. We're not going to get to it before 7 p.m. So I will adjourn this meeting, and then we'll reconvene, let's say 7:05 to start the main meeting.